So what were the members like as people and artists?
Well, definitely a strange bunch of guys. Each one extremely intelligent in their own right. As people, let's go. Let's start with Randy Rush. Randy was very eclectic, um, kind of a strange character. May he rest in peace. Randy passed away. One of the most phenomenal guitar players I had ever seen. Um, Also a very good songwriter. All these guys wrote, which was a great thing. So yeah, Randy was quiet kind of guy, little strange. Again, great musician, great artist. But a fairly regular guy. A lot of these guys were kind of into the military, I should say, very into military stuff and guns and war and combat and that kind of dress and garb and that whole thing. Flynn Picardle, rhythm guitar player. Flynn was a very intelligent, very smart guy, kind of schooled, now a college professor. Uh, you know, not a surprise at all. Played different instruments, played guitar, played keyboards, also wrote. Pretty eclectic in his tastes in music, but a pretty regular guy. Got along with everybody pretty well. So yeah, Flynn was a little on the strange side, but fairly normal dude. Moving on to Steve Myers, bass player. Steve, Steve was an interesting cat. Had a very very unique look to him. Had that kind of mean, military kind of look. Also very into the military thing, guns and that whole thing. Super nice guy. Didn't look happy, but was a happy guy. Was a good guy. Pretty easy to get along with. Great bass player. Good writer as well. Good background vocalist. But a tough guy. He wanted things done right. He didn't like putting up with some of the nonsense that went on. Which made things difficult, like it did in every band. So that's kind of what Steve was about. Moving on to Larry Hill, the drummer. Me and Larry became very close. We were good friends because Larry was the engineer, more the engineer producer of the band. He wrote a lot of the material with Greg, arranged a lot of the material, arranged a lot of the background vocals with the guys. When it came time for recording, Larry recorded and engineered and did all that stuff. Also a very talented songwriter. Great guy, pretty basic guy, not as military as the other guys. Larry was more into the Beach Boys and that kind of rock, and more into the harmonies and the sweet side of the band. But again, Larry also was the kind of guy that didn't like putting up with the nonsense, and it made for some tough times. And now to get to where the nonsense came from, Greg McLaughlin, the lead singer of the band. Also, very, very intelligent guy, Greg. Very talented, great writer, great frontman. I don't think Greg had ever been a frontman or a lead singer until we started the front, but it was just a completely natural thing for him. But Greg was definitely the, crazy one of the bunch. Greg was kind of the definition of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So. you know, with girlfriends and them seeing the same girls and drugs and, just not showing up on time, not showing up, just, getting into trouble. That was Greg. And, there's a lot to say about, kind of needing that personality in the band because the mixture of all these guys is what really made the front. Again, it created a lot of friction. It created a lot of problems. It got to the point where they threw Greg out of the band, and that was almost the end of the front. We started auditioning people at that time, new singers, but you know, I even auditioned for the band as lead singer, and I think I did a pretty damn good job of it. Richard Shelter auditioned for the band, and Richard happened to be very good. So we had some good auditions in there and good things, but it just wasn't the front anymore without Greg. You know, the writing, the sound of his vocal, the visual of him as front man. It just, you know, it would be like trying to replace Lennon or McCartney on that level. It just, you know, didn't happen. So Greg came back into the fold and came back into the band. So things started up again with Greg, and we kept moving along.
Next question.
Next question.
What is
You're
it?
editing, right, Greg?
So if this band became so popular in its time, why was it never made big and got a record deal and stuff like that?
Well, good question. You know, it's funny because a lot of the responses I got from record companies were that they're kind of ahead of their time. You know, that was one thing about the front, is they were different, and their music, a lot of their songs and music were a little ahead of the time. And you know, I remember a comment, I forgot from which label, I think it was A&M Records, you know, about a song called The Dead Ed Sullivan Show. And the title speaks for itself. Very clever song, great song. And but her comment was that it's a little bit too clever. So, you know, I think that had a lot to do with it, that they weren't, you know, so commercial, because they refused to be. From some of these comments from record labels, I remember the guys actually making an attempt to write a little more commercially, and we did. We wrote some more commercial stuff, but it just wasn't the front. So, yeah, and then also the record companies at that time, and the record industry in general, again, it was right before MTV. The record industry was in the doldrums and not doing well. The records weren't selling, and it was just kind of tough times all around. And I literally sent to every single label, you know, many times over, many demos, our singles, the album. It just, you know, we had interest. They wanted to hear more material, but just never got that deal. The closest we came was when we put out the single Aluminum Room, which was a song that I believe Larry wrote. Great song, very new wave, you know, 80s kind of sound. And I decided to send it to Billboard magazine. And all of a sudden, a few weeks later, without even knowing, my phone's ringing off the hook. Record companies are now calling me that they want, can we please send them the Aluminum Room single? I finally asked, why, how do you know about this single? What's going on? And they said, oh, you're a top pick in Billboard magazine. And I was like, oh. Again, not even knowing. So I went and got the Billboard, and sure enough, we were under recommended picks with all these major bands, Missing Persons, and you know, I can't even remember all the bands that we were listed with as a top recommended pick for the week, which basically what that meant is Billboard had picked Aluminum Room as a possible single to hit the top 40 on the Billboard charts. So, and the funny thing is, at this point, the band was broken up, kind of. We just weren't doing anything. They all kind of hated each other, and nothing was going on. So I called all the guys and told them, hey, you know, we're a top pick in Billboard magazine. They picked your record to hit the top 40. Record companies are calling, and you guys are not together right now. Well, needless to say, I never saw a band get together a little more quickly than they did right then. So things continued again, but still, even with the top pick in Billboard, no record deal. So